Kimberly Guilfoyle, a Trump campaign spokesperson and the girlfriend of the president's son Donald Trump Jr., spoke on the opening night of the convention. She says presidential leadership is not guaranteed. It is a choice. Biden, Harris, and the rest of the socialists will fundamentally change this nation. They will defend, dismantle, and destroy America's law enforcement. When you are in trouble and need police, don't count on the Democrats. Guilfoyle painted a dark picture of an America led by Democratic nominee Joe Biden. Guilfoyle attacked Democrats, blaming them for a cancel culture, amongst other attacks. In part of her speech, Guilfoyle criticized the governance of California, a state which happens to be governed by her ex-husband, Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom. Former United States Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley spoke on the opening night of the convention. She says, in much of the Democratic Party, it's now fashionable to say that America is racist. That is a lie. America is not a racist country. America is a story that's a work in progress. Now is the time to build on that progress, and make America even freer, fairer and better for everyone. That's why it's so tragic to see so much of the Democratic Party turning a blind eye towards riots and rage. Early into her speech, she quoted fellow former United States Ambassador to the United Nations Jane Kirkpatrick as having said, "Democrats always blame America first." This was a key line from Kirkpatrick's own speech to the 1984 Republican National Convention. In her speech, Haley invoked her parents, both immigrants from India. Haley's speech strongly supported Trump's re-election. Despite his moderate political record, Haley attempted to link Democratic nominee Joe Biden with the socialist left. She also painted the prospect of a Biden presidency as beneficial to the interests of China and Iran. Haley also offered strong criticism of the foreign policy of the Obama administration, in which Biden served as vice president. She argued that while Trump has a record of strength and success, Biden has a record of weakness and failure, and that while Trump has moved America forward, Biden has held America back. United States Senator from South Carolina Tim Scott spoke on the opening night of the convention. He says, "My grandfather's 99th birthday would have been tomorrow. Growing up, he had to cross the street if a white person was coming. He suffered the indignity of being forced out of school as a third grader to pick cotton, and never learned to read or write. Yet, he lived to see his grandson become the first African American to be elected to both the United States House and Senate. Our family went from cotton to Congress in one lifetime. And that's why I believe the next American century can be better than the last. There are millions of families like mine across this nation, full of potential seeking to live the American dream. And I'm here tonight to tell you that supporting the Republican ticket gives you the best chance of making that dream a reality." In his speech, Scott declared that 2020 has tested our nation in ways we haven't seen for decades, invoking the COVID-19 pandemic as well as the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor as having tested the United States. Scott praised the Trump administration's actions on police reform. Scott cited the opportunity zones as something he had worked with Trump on creating, neglecting to mention the key involvement of Democrats Cory Booker and Ron Kind, who had proposed the idea in collaboration with Scott. Scott declared his support for school choice. He declared opposition to cancel culture. He declared his belief in the goodness of America. He quoted Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden as having said numerous remarks offensive to him as a black man. He also criticized Biden's actions, such as his involvement in the 1994 crime bill. Scott accused Biden of wanting to give tax cuts to blue state millionaires at the expense of most Americans. Scott painted Trump's own Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 as having benefited single moms, working families, and those in need. Scott attempted to tie Biden and his running mate Kamala Harris to socialism. He declared, Joe Biden's radical Democrats are trying to permanently transform what it means to be an American. Make no mistake, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want a cultural revolution. A fundamentally different America. If we let them, they will turn our country into a socialist utopia, and history has taught us that path only leads to pain and misery, especially for hardworking people hoping to rise. Donald Trump Jr., the son of the president, spoke on the opening night of the convention. He says people of faith are under attack. You're not allowed to go to church, but mass chaos in the streets gets a pass. It's almost like this election is shaping up to be church, work and school versus rioting, looting and vandalism. Trump cast a picture of a descent into anarchy, violence, and oppression if the Democratic ticket wins the election. Trump portrayed Democrats as plotting to destroy the American way of life. Trump warned that Democrats want to bully us into submission. If they get their way, it will no longer be the silent majority. It will be the silenced majority. He also accused Democrats of attacking the very principles on which our nation was founded: freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the rule of law. Trump derided his father's main opponent for the presidency, Democratic nominee Joe Biden, with numerous nicknames, including Beijing Biden and the Loch Ness Monster of the Swamp. He touted the shape of the economy prior to COVID-19, for which he blamed the Chinese Communist Party.